Sit back, relax, and let's have a chapter chat. I'm your host, Jessica Foster, and today we have author Nikesha Elise Williams here with us, and she's going to be talking about her latest novel, The Seven Daughters of Dupree. Nikesha, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And Nikesha, you have such an interesting background. We have some things in common because you used to be a television producer.
Yes, I did. That's how it went. My background is as a journalist, 11 years as a TV producer at the local level.
And you're an Emmy award-winning producer also.
Yeah, that happened.
So impressive. So let's talk about how you went from journalism to now being a published author.
It was always something I did on the side, writing. I've always loved writing. And I think the reason I went into journalism is because I wanted to write, but what job is that, right? Like you see books, but you don't know how books are published, especially as a kid growing up in the 90s, right? You just like the books appear in the store and people write them, but what the trajectory of that is unclear. I mean, it's still kind of unclear to be honest about it. So, I mean, I saw journalism as a way to help me get to write professionally. Um, and being a producer at the local level, all you do is write scripts for shows. So you're writing all the time. But beyond that, I was always doing like personal writing projects on the side. Like I did a project where I wrote a letter every day. I wrote a blog for a few years. I then started working on a short story, which became my first self-published novel. And like once I started writing as a novelist, I guess. Then it just became about formatting the story. And then I've even been able to, when I left television in 2019, I freelanced for 3 years. And so I was still using my journalism skills, but I was pitching stories that I was interested in. Um, and then taking assignments that I was interested in and writing that way, which led to my nonfiction book. But fiction has always had my heart. And so I'm always writing a story. There's always a story or a character in mind somewhere, no matter how well formed or not it is.
When I was a child, I used to write stories all the time just for fun.
Yeah.
That was my idea of fun. And then I would share them with my parents or grandparents. I'd be, listen to this one, listen to this one. And so that's kind of how I got into journalism as well. So it really is kind of a natural fit, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, from the time I could read, like you learn to read, and then if you're like a bookish kid that really is into reading, you want to try to see if you can do it yourself. And so you write the story. And then it's like, okay, now where does that take you? Do you follow the path of journalism where you're writing stories or telling other people's stories? Or do you try to become like a writer and author where you are writing your own stories? So, I mean, there are lots of avenues there.
What I have found with journalistic writing is that you're writing facts and you have very short sentences, subject, verb, object. And then when you're
Mhm.
writing maybe a fiction novel, the writing is a little bit different.
It's a lot different. So, like, background in television, a script is what, 20 seconds, right? Um, and you may write 40 of those if you have an hour-long show. So, and then the sentences have to fit in the mouth. So someone has to be able to say them comfortably, easily on a first take because there are no takes in news. It's like what you see is what you get live. And so you have to be mindful of that, and as well as mindful of the anchor that you're writing for, the voice that they have, what they're comfortable saying, how they like to bend a phrase. All of that is something that you develop as a skill as a producer. And so I've taken that same skill from my days as a producer and applied it to my work as a novelist, where I am writing for voice. I am writing for the voice of a character. I want to hear the character the way that they would say something out loud in conversation. And I'm just casually or candidly observing, right? And then in the exposition parts of the novel, which, coming from television, I had to really work to get my chops in that area, writing exposition, writing description, having these long blocks of text that do not let the reader go, that are still engaging, but are not as easy to me as dialogue may be. And being able to play on the page in that way with varied sentence lengths, different types of sentence structures, playing with lyricism, with rhythm, with rhyme, and all those different craft elements that make for a good book.
And let's talk about your latest novel, The Seven Daughters of Dupree. And for people that aren't familiar with it, let's give them a brief little synopsis.
All right. So, The Seven Daughters of Dupree is a historical fiction novel about the secrets kept between mothers and daughters over the course of 7 generations. And it's told backwards in time from 1995 to 1860. And so the novel opens in Chicago on the South Side, which is where I'm originally from, with 14-year-old Tatiana, who is one of the main characters. There are 7. And it's her birthday. And before she can go out and celebrate with like her mom and her best friend, she has to go down to the basement where her mother, Nadia, runs a beauty salon. And the client for that morning is her grandmother, Gladys, whom Tati calls Mimi. And you would think that in this basement with 3 generations that Gladys and Nadia will be giving Tati words of encouragement and words of wisdom and like teaching her in the ways of womanhood and all these things. And that is absolutely not happening because Tati has a lot of anger and angst for her mother and her grandmother. They're keeping a secret from her. She wants to know the identity of her father, and they refuse to tell her. And so that is the very first secret in the line of Dupree women that stretches all the way back to the fictional town of Land's End, Alabama, in 1860, where the first in their line lived. And they don't know anything about this woman. They don't know her name. They don't know where she was from. They only know the legend of how she died. And that legend is not a spoiler. It's the very first line of the book in the prologue. And it says, they cut off her head because she ran. And so, you know, in that one line that we're not only going to deal with enslavement and Reconstruction and Jim Crow, but also the Great Migration, how the family got from Land's End to Chicago, everything that happened there, different, you know, longings for maternity and paternity tests and things like that, as well as how they end up coming back to heal and repair and just reconstruct their lineage on the land where they were first from.
And I talk about this so much in this podcast is that historical fiction is such an important genre because it takes history that's often ignored or that people don't want to talk about, and it puts it in a form that people can digest easily. And it brings it to the forefront.
I think for me, all of my writing stems from where journalism technically ends, like the questions that are still unanswered after the news goes off, right? And so for me specifically with this novel being historical fiction, I was obsessed with the stories of the Clotilda when they discovered the ship at the bottom of, I think it was with the Alabama River in 2019. And so it was that kind of question, like what, yes, we know Africa Town and we know the descendants are still here and still preserving that history, but it was at a time where I had a lot of questions. And so I wanted to play with different news stories on the page. Or like, not only am I talking about the legacy of a situation like the Clotilda, but I'm also talking about the Black maternal health crisis because there's a birthing curse that affects the 7 generations of women throughout the novel. I'm also talking about things that actually happen with Reconstruction and with Jim Crow and with the Great Migration, such as, you know, the importance of the Pullman Porters and how they delivered the Chicago Defender to Black people across the South, encouraging them to leave the South, to flee the domestic terror of racial terror lynchings and move to other places and the warmth of other suns, as Richard Wright once said, and as Isabel Wilkerson wrote in her book of the same name. And so being able to take all of this history that I am a history nerd. So to take all of this history that I've been interested in since I was a child and be able to play with it on the page and the lives of these characters to talk about passing and colorism in the Black community, the importance of our food and hair care and beauty ways and all these different things, it allows readers to have empathy for pieces of history that are not really taught in school or that are actively trying to be banned, and understand them through the guise of a character and a story, but being very much grounded in real and true experiences. And so I think that's the beauty of historical fiction.
Well, it makes people dig a little bit deeper too.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, I didn't know about that. And then you dig into it a little bit more.
I mean, there's so many places to begin. Like, and I think the beauty of historical fiction and allowing readers to dig into what's happening in the story is that when you hear an interview like this with an author, or you go to an author talk, or you read the author's note at either the beginning or the end of the book, it usually gives you a place to begin, resources to go. It's like, so if you like this book and you want to know the real stories that inspired it, I suggest you start here. So for me, for the Seven Daughters of Dupree, there are two stories that I think that people can start with. And you can start with the stories of the Clotilda, because that was an actual slave ship that did come into the United States in June of 1860 with 120 enslaved Africans from the Dahomey region. And all the books that have come out and podcasts and so many different resources about that ship specifically, but then also the creation of Africa Town, which is still there in Mobile, Alabama, as well as the descendants who still live there. And there's like documentaries on Netflix about them right now. So you can start there to learn the true history behind what I'm playing with on the page. There's also like resources. I'm based in Jacksonville, Florida. And so the history of Kingsley Plantation and American Beach also informs some of the storyline of the Seven Daughters of Dupree and the historical story. If you're thinking about looking at the contemporary storyline that's set in Chicago of the 1990s, there are stories about the Pullman Porter. I mentioned Isabel Wilkerson's book, The Warmth of Other Suns. That is a great resource. So historical fiction is a gateway, I think, for people to learn more about the history of this country, if it's true writing about the United States, as well as things that aren't always taught in school that you can only find in a book, and that people are doing the research about, that writers are elucidating in their work, whether they write fiction or nonfiction, and that are there for the discovery, so that you have a more well-rounded view of what history is, and what history has been preserved, and what history has gone under this like culture of ethnic genocide and erasure, and that you can resurface just through opening a book.
And what, if you had to sum up into maybe one sentence, what you want readers to take away from this book, what would you say that is?
So it's not one sentence, but it's two questions. The two questions that I always have for readers at the end of the novel is, what do mothers or parents owe their children, daughters specifically? Do they owe their children explanation of their lowest moments, of their choices and decisions? And then on the other end, the other question is, do daughters owe their mothers, or children in general owe their parents, grace and understanding of those decisions and of those explanations?
Ooh, I love that. And I think that this is a fantastic novel for book clubs too, because it lends itself to so much discussion and self-discovery, really.
Mm-hmm. I have loved talking to book clubs and joining their meetings and hearing what they're talking about. A lot of people that I've spoken to over the course of the book has been out have talked about how they have read this novel, sat with it, and then they want to call their mom and find out about their own history and their own lineage and all of those different things. And so that's been really great, that a book can make you want to look internally as well, and to look at your own history, and to examine the conversations that haven't been had, the secrets that are still being kept, and all of those things. So I think that's been a really good thing to connect with readers about. Excited and happy that they're enjoying it as much as they are, that they want to apply it to their own lives. And so I'm just really grateful to book clubs and to readers for embracing the Seven Daughters of Dupree the way that they have.
And readers really are embracing it. You're getting some great reviews.
Thank you.
And I know that as an author, that must feel, one, like a relief, because when you pour so much of yourself into a work and then you put it out into the world, it's like, oh, here we go.
It is a relief. One of my greatest fears is that, one, that no one would read it and no one would buy it.
Yeah.
But beyond that like I'd be on like social media just scrolling one day, and then there's someone like trashing my book. And there's lots of debate in the online book community space about, should authors be in reader spaces? And so if I do come across comments, because now like the algorithm is working and showing me everything.
Right.
But if I do come across comments, a lot of them have been very positive. I haven't really seen anything negative, which I'm grateful for. But if I recognize that, one, I was not tagged into the conversation, but I see it, I may drop in and say, hey, thank you everyone for your comments. I'm going to leave your reader business. But it's been really good. I've been really grateful and appreciative of all the feedback, and that everyone's really embracing the book and loving it the way that they are. Like, it's no greater feeling in the world.
And you have been on this journey. You've self-published and then you've worked with traditional publishers. Can you talk to me a little bit about that transition?
The first transition into traditional publishing was completely unexpected. So, like, I started self-publishing in 2017, and between 2017 and 2020, I self-published 5 novels and a poetry collection. Um, and found a lot of success there. Found, I think, my footing in my storytelling, and like really developed as a writer in that journey and on that trajectory, and was very happy there for a while. And then my first foray into traditional publishing was with my nonfiction book, Mardi Gras Indians, that was published by Elise Press in 2022. And the way that came about, as I said earlier, I left television in 2019, but I started freelancing as a journalist. And so I had written this essay for the outlet called The Bitter Southerner, kind of a personal essay called Beans and Rice, More Than a Poor Man's Meal, about like one of my favorite meals, which is red beans and rice, because my parents are from New Orleans. And the acquisitions editor from LSU Press saw it and reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I read this essay. We're doing a series of books about Louisiana culture. Would you want to write one?" And I was like, "Well, absolutely," because up until that point, I had never been like offered an opportunity to write a book for a traditional publisher. University presses are small, generally regional, generally nonprofit, but it's still the first like foray into trad publishing. And it came with money. And so as a self-published author, I'm spending my own money to put my work in the world. And with Mardi Gras Indians, they were going to actually pay me in advance. Small advance, but in advance nonetheless. We beggars can't be choosy.
Right.
So that was the first foray. And that experience was completely organic. I still had to write a book proposal. Still had to write the draft. It was what they call peer reviewed, and then they will give you your first set of notes and feedback, and they have to approve your book before the press accepts it for publication. And it's similar to like Big Five publishing, which I'm doing now, but like that was my first experience at that level, which made me a little nervous because I'm not an academic, I'm not a historian, I am a journalist. And so like that's a different set of skills when writing a nonfiction book, and then especially one that is so steeped in history, steeped in the archive, and is really about an oral tradition and culture that has been passed down since the formation of the Louisiana colony in the late 1700s, right? So that was the first experience there, and that really stretched me as a writer, as a journalist, and as someone who could do rigorous academic work and still make it palatable to a trade audience, right? And then after that, the Seven Daughters of Dupree, like I said, fiction is my first love. So I was in the trenches like many writers, where I had to write this book and then I had to query for an agent. And, in this process, it can be so sometimes demoralizing
Right.
because you'll get a lot of no's. And you have to realize that some of those no's are really for you. Like they are protection. And so it took a long time for me to get to my agent. And then once I did sign with my agent, everything took off very quickly. We did like a couple revisions. We went on submission 2 months after we signed with each other. The book sold to my editor in a week, and then it was off to the races. But I think all of my prior experience self-publishing, doing Mardi Gras Indians, working on my craft as a writer, knowing when something was or was not right in the text, really prepared me for a journey that started to take off as soon as me and my agent signed on the dotted line.
And when you look back, you notice those times in your life when you're in the trenches and you're like, am I ever going to have my break? Is this ever going to be
Yes.
for me? And then you arrive and you're like, okay, that's why I had to go through all of that.
Yeah, it's been a long journey personally and professionally. I mean, people ask me about, how does it feel? And all I can say is that it's so surreal. Like, this is what I've wanted since I first saw a contest in 2013 called Critique My Novel, where they were like, send us the first 10,000 words of your manuscript and we'll give you professional feedback. Like, that's when I started writing what became my debut self-published novel, For Women. And, with that book, I had agents. We went on submission and it was no sale. And that's why I started self-publishing, because I had gotten so close and I was like, well, I don't want to just like put the book in the bottom drawer of the file cabinet like every proverbial writer does. And then like there's always the book that's in the drawer that will never see the light of day. I was like, I think it's kind of good. And so let me try. And so from then, it's just been a journey of trying to get to this level and knowing that as a writer, books don't expire. Your craft only gets better. And when it's your time, it is a lot of luck, timing, and opportunity. But when it's your time, it will happen. Like, I truly believe that.
It's interesting that you talk about craft getting better. There's an author that I enjoy reading her books, and I realized I'd never read her very first novel. And I went back and read her first novel that she had ever published, and I could see her growth as a writer. So I love doing that. Once I find an author that I love, I like seeing their whole catalog of work, and I really just love to see their growth.
I'm starting to see that, like, when I check my indie numbers for my indie books, like, and I usually check it like once a month. Seeing that people are going back, like they've read Seven Daughters, and so now they're going back and they're digging in my crates and they're digging in my back catalog and in my backlist and seeing which books they're picking up and which ones they're starting with. It's been interesting. I'm just like, please give me grace.
Right? Yes, yes. Because we all evolve. It's kind of like if I go back and look at my first news report, when I was a baby reporter, I'm like, oh,
yeah.
And I thought that was so good. And I had a lot to learn.
In this profession as a writer, you only get better because the more you do it, the better you get at it. It doesn't get easier, but you get better.
Exactly. And you're a full-time author now.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I still have a day job. Like, this is like my first traditionally published book, and while the advance was great, I have two little ones. I'm a single parent. We have a mortgage, so I do have a day job that I'm maintaining. At some point, I hope to walk away and make novel writing the full-time gig, but I'm not there just yet.
Well, I see that in your future. You are just...
Amen. I receive it.
Yes, you are so talented.
Thank you.
Nobody gets things done like a mama.
Very true.
Yeah, I'm a mom myself. I have a 12, almost 13-year-old now. And I feel like I can get a lot done in a day.
Absolutely. I absolutely can get a lot done in a day. It amazes me sometimes.
Now, are your kiddos, are they small or do you have teenagers?
So my son is 11 and then my daughter is 4.5. She and the book are like about the same age. As far as long as I was working on it. I started the book 7 days before she was born. And so they have come of age together now that the book is finally in the world. But yeah, those are my babies.
And I'm sure they love cheering mom on.
Not really. They don't care about anything I have going on at all. They are very much about, okay, and so what is the activity for us when you finish this book stuff? Because it's still our time.
I get that for sure. You're like, but if mom can be successful at this provides opportunities for you.
That part, I did have to let my son know, hey, we're going to go to this book event. It's my launch and you're going to smile and take pictures because the money from the book pays for everything in here, including your lifestyle.
Exactly. So what is next for you?
So I am working on something new. I have two ideas that I love. One I am actively working on, and then the other is kind of like shelved for now. Like there are planning documents in my computer. I think about it often, but I'm like, I got to finish this draft of this thing that I'm working on. It's a contemporary story. And it's about how we survived a crisis. And it's multi-POV, following different sets and couples of characters, sometimes romantic couples, sometimes friendship couples, but through a year of crisis and how we survived and what that looks like and what they clung to in the end.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing also. What advice do you have for people who are listening and they have a dream of writing and getting published? What's your biggest piece of advice?
My biggest piece of advice for people who dream of writing and being published is to read more than you write and then to write.
Say that. Just start writing.
There's nothing scarier, at least to me as an author, than a blank page.
Hmm.
There's nothing scarier than a blank page and then being tasked to fill it. Um, and that doesn't even mean that you're filling it well. It just means that you're putting words on the page. Like there's nothing scary. Like I can think of 1,001 other things I would rather do than sit in front of my computer and clickety clack on the keys and, get this story out of my head. Like I would rather watch TV. I would rather doom scroll on my phone. I might even rather like clean my bathroom, and I don't ever want to do that.
Yeah.
But that is how daunting to me the blank page can be. But when I sit down and I start and the words come and they flow, even if they're not the best words, even if they're clunky and it's not landing right, if I can just start, I will find my footing in whatever it is that I'm working on, and it will be okay. But it's starting it's like you have to, like for me, I have to psych myself up to sit down and start. And then as I'm doing it, I remember how much I love it. And when I'm not writing, I know how I think about how much I miss it, but then I have to like start that cycle all over again where I'm like gearing myself up to return to the page. It's a mess.
Yeah, I get that. I really do. I'm actually working on a little side project myself because I've always had a dream of publishing a book also. And I
Okay.
completely understand what you're saying. It's the hardest thing is just to start. And for some reason with journalism, I think it's because we have deadlines and the 5 o'clock news is coming at 5 o'clock.
Whether you're ready for it or not.
Right. So you better type something. But when you're working on a side project, you kind of have this unlimited time, so to speak. And I think it's
Yeah.
sometimes harder to be disciplined to just get it done.
Discipline can be difficult. This project that I'm working on now has taken me the longest of any other writing project I've ever done. The first draft took me like 19 months. The second draft that I'm working on now, I'm almost at like the year mark will be like sometime in May, and I'm still only halfway. I haven't even reached like the halfway point. I'm like 2 inches from the halfway point, but I'm not there yet. It's taken me forever. And it's because I've had to retrain myself, uh, discipline, consistency, but then also like give myself grace and rest. Like there's a whole balancing act here. Like writing the Seven Daughters of Dupree was a fever dream for me. Like I woke up every day at 5 a.m. and wrote from 5 a.m. to 6:15 to get the book done over the course of between 2021 and 2022 when I finished the second draft. And I was on it. I cannot force myself to do that at all. And so now I'm trying to find the pockets of time where I can dedicate to writing and say, okay, I have time, or I don't have my children there with my co-parent. Let me go back to the page and get back into this story, and just having to give myself grace with, okay, I don't have the same capacity as I once did before. Also, I don't have to have that same type of discipline. And I don't think that's the best thing to say, but I don't have to have the same type of discipline because at this point, I'm still working on making sure the Seven Daughters of Dupree is a success. No one is really, at least my team, is really checking for what I have coming next. They're going to want something, but
Yeah.
it's not top of mind right now. Top of mind is making sure that the Seven Daughters of Dupree is a success. And so I know I have time. And in that, I'm giving myself grace and space to approach the page and to get the story down and to give the story what it needs, while also giving myself what I need as the author.
Well, I love that you talk about giving yourself grace and the Seven Daughters of Dupree. It is a success. We're saying that now because It's a wonderful, wonderful work of historical fiction. And it has been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful.
Of course. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Chapter Chat. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Happy reading.